you doing? Do you think Go ahead, impress us.
Vincent Hale snatched the microphone from the MC's hand. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a special guest tonight. He pointed at the janitor near the stage. This man has been fondling our piano all evening. Let's see if he can actually play it. 600 people turned to stare. Marcus Webb stood frozen, mop in hand, uniform stained, his 9-year-old daughter watching from the shadows. Vincent grinned. Come on, janitor. Show us what those cleaning hands can do. Unless you're afraid. The laughter started. What no one knew, not the donors, not the critics, not even the CEO sitting in the front row, was that Marcus Webb had once been the greatest pianist Juilliard ever produced. And tonight, he would remind them all. Comment your city below. Let's see how far this story travels. Play, play, play. The chant started somewhere in the back. Drunk voices, champagne courage. Within seconds it spread through the crowd like wildfire. Vincent Hale stood on stage, microphone in hand, conducting the humiliation like a symphony. His silver hair gleamed under the chandeliers. His smile cut like glass. You heard them, janitor. Vincent gestured toward the Bosendorfer grand piano. Your audience awaits. Marcus didn't move. His fingers tightened around the mop handle until his knuckles went white. 600 faces stared at him, some laughing, some uncomfortable, most just hungry for entertainment. He was the joke, the punchline, the cleaning man who had been caught touching a piano he had no right to touch. Dad. The whisper came from behind the curtain. Sophie, 9 years old, watching her father be torn apart by strangers in tuxedos. Marcus turned his head slightly. Their eyes met. Don't, his expression said. But Sophie didn't look away. She held up her sketchbook, pressing it against the curtain gap. He couldn't see the drawing, but he knew what it was. She had been drawing the same thing for months. Him, at a piano, playing. What's the matter? Vincent's voice boomed through the speakers. Stage fright, or did you forget which end of the mop makes music? The laughter exploded. Marcus closed his eyes. 7 years. He had been invisible for 7 years. Cleaning floors. Emptying trash. Raising Sophie alone in a 2-bedroom apartment where the heat didn't always work. He had buried everything, the music, the memories, the man he used to be. And now this silver-haired vulture was digging it all up for sport. I think we've embarrassed him enough. A woman's voice cut through the noise. Sharp. Authoritative. Vincent, give back the microphone. Elena Ashford stood up from the front row, CEO of the Ashford Arts Foundation. The woman who owned this building funded this gala and could end Vincent Hale's career with a single phone call. But Vincent only smiled wider. Oh, come now, Elena. It's just a bit of fun. The man clearly loves music. Let's see how much. May. He turned back to Marcus. Final offer, janitor. 1 song. Anything you want. Impress us, and I'll write about you in my column. Fail, and... He shrugged. Well, at least the floors are clean. More laughter. Marcus opened his eyes. He looked at Vincent Hale, the man who had destroyed careers with a paragraph, who decided which musicians lived and which ones died in obscurity. He looked at the donors in their $1,000 suits, laughing at a joke they didn't even understand. He looked at Elena Ashford, standing alone, the only person in the room who wasn't smiling. And then he looked at Sophie. She nodded once. Small. Certain. Marcus set down the mop. The crowd went quiet. He walked toward the stage. Slowly. Each step echoing off the marble floor like a heartbeat. The laughter faded. The chanting stopped. Something in his posture had changed, something that made people lean back in their seats. Vincent's smile flickered. Well, he said, recovering quickly, it seems our janitor has some courage after all. Let's give him a round of encouragement. Scattered applause. Nervous now. Marcus climbed the steps to the stage. He didn't look at Vincent. He didn't look at the audience. His eyes were fixed on the piano. The Bosendorfer Imperial. He had played one once 20 years ago at his senior recital at Juilliard. He remembered the weight of the keys, the depth of the sound, the way the bass notes resonated through his entire body like a second heartbeat. He remembered Miriam sitting in the third row crying before he even finished the first movement. He remembered everything. Marcus stopped in front of the piano. His hand reached out, hesitated, then rested on the closed fallboard. "Well," Vincent crossed his arms. "We're waiting." Marcus didn't respond. Instead, he lifted the fallboard slowly, revealing the keys beneath. 97 of them, white and black, silent and waiting. He sat down on the bench. The leather was cool against his legs. The height was wrong. He adjusted it, muscle memory taking over. His feet found the pedals. His shoulders relaxed. His hands rose above the keys and stopped. "Having second thoughts." Vincent's voice dripped with satisfaction. "It's not too late to go back to your mop." Marcus heard him, but the words seemed distant now, like sounds from another room. He was staring at his hands, calloused, rough, stained with cleaning chemicals and 7 years of manual labor. These weren't the hands of a pianist anymore. These were the hands of a janitor, a single father, a man who had given up. He couldn't do this. The thought hit him like ice water. He couldn't do this. Not here. Not now. Not with 600 people watching and his daughter's hopes hanging on every note. He started to stand. "Marcus." The voice was soft, female, close. He turned. Elena Ashford had moved to the edge of the stage just a few feet away. Her eyes met his dark, steady, seeing something the others couldn't. "Play for her," Elena said quietly. "Not for them, for her." She glanced toward the curtain where Sophie was hiding. Marcus followed her gaze. His daughter's face was pressed against the gap in the fabric, her eyes wide, her hands clutched together like she was praying. For her. Marcus sat back down. He placed his hands on the keys, and he began to play. The first note was wrong. His fingers slipped too much pressure, too little control. The sound came out harsh, jarring. A few people in the audience snickered. Vincent's smile returned. Marcus closed his eyes. He took a breath, and he tried again. This time the note rang true, soft, pure. A single G hanging in the air like a question waiting to be answered. Then came the second note, and the third, and suddenly his hands remembered. Chopin. Ballade No. 1 in G minor. The melody unfolded like a story, hesitant at first, then building, layering, growing. His fingers moved across the keys with increasing confidence, finding shapes they hadn't made in 7 years. The audience went still. Vincent's smile faded. Elena's hand rose to her chest, and Marcus played. He played the way he used to play before Miriam died, with his whole body, his whole heart, his whole history. Every note carried weight. Every phrase held meaning. The music wasn't just sound. It was memory. It was grief. It was love that had nowhere else to go. He played the night he met Miriam at a jazz club in Brooklyn, when she laughed at his classical training and made him improvise for the first time in his life. He played their wedding when he surprised her with a piece he had written just for her. He played the hospital room, holding her hand while machines beeped and doctors whispered and everything fell apart. He played Sophie's first steps, her first words, her first drawing of a piano, crooked lines and too many keys but perfect anyway. He played 7 years of silence, 7 years of mopping floors and paying bills and pretending the music didn't matter anymore. And then, as the ballad reached its climax, he played something else. Hope. The final chord rang through Hartwell Opera House like thunder, and then silence. Marcus sat motionless, his hands still on the keys, his eyes still closed. He could hear his own breathing. He could feel his heart pounding against his ribs. He didn't want to open his eyes. He didn't want to see the laughter, the mockery, the polite applause of people who didn't understand what they had just witnessed. But then he heard it. A sound that started small, a single pair of hands clapping, and then grew, and grew, and grew. Marcus opened his eyes. The entire audience was standing. Not polite applause, not obligatory praise. People were crying. A woman in the front row had mascara running down her cheeks. An old man near the back was wiping his eyes with a handkerchief. Even the waiters had stopped moving trays frozen in midair. Elena Ashford stood at the edge of the stage, her hands pressed together, her lips slightly parted. And Vincent Hale. Vincent stood alone near the piano, his microphone forgotten at his side. His face was pale, his eyes were wide. For the first time in his 40-year career, he had nothing to say. Marcus rose slowly from the bench. He didn't bow. He didn't smile. He just stood there, looking out at the sea of faces, feeling something he hadn't felt in 7 years. Seen. Then a small body crashed into his legs. "Dad!" Sophie had run out from behind the curtain, tears streaming down her face, her sketchbook clutched against her chest. She wrapped her arms around him and squeezed with all the strength her 9-year-old body possessed. Marcus knelt down and held her. "You did it," she whispered into his shoulder. "You finally did it." He couldn't speak. His throat was too tight. All he could do was hold his daughter and let the applause wash over them like rain after a long drought. "Who are you?" Vincent's voice was hoarse. He had recovered enough to speak, but something fundamental had shifted in his expression. The arrogance was gone. In its place was something that looked almost like fear. Marcus stood keeping Sophie close. "I'm the janitor," he said quietly. "I clean the floors. I empty the trash. I make sure no one trips over loose cables." He paused. "That's what you see." "But that," Vincent gestured at the piano. That was 7 years of silence." Marcus met his eyes. 7 years of hiding. 7 years of telling myself that music didn't matter anymore, because the person I made it for was gone. The audience was still standing, still silent, hanging on every word. "You wanted to humiliate me tonight," Marcus continued. "You wanted to make me small. And maybe I was small. Maybe I've been small for a long time." He looked down at Sophie, then back at Vincent. But not anymore. Vincent opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. He swallowed hard. "I didn't know." "No," Marcus agreed. "You didn't. Because you never asked. You just assumed that someone who mops floors couldn't possibly have anything worth hearing." He shook his head slowly. "That's the problem with critics, Mr. Hale. You spend so much time judging music you forget how to hear it." He took Sophie's hand and turned toward the stairs. "Where are you going?" Elena Ashford's voice stopped him. Marcus looked back. "Home. My shift ended 2 hours ago." "Wait." She stepped closer. "Please." Their eyes met. Something passed between them. Recognition, understanding the shared knowledge of what it feels like to bury something precious and pretend it doesn't hurt. "We need to talk," Elena said softly. Marcus hesitated. Sophie tugged his hand. "Dad, she's nice, I can tell." A small smile crossed Marcus's face. "How can you tell?" She didn't laugh, not once. Marcus looked at Elena again. She was waiting, not demanding, not expecting, just waiting. "Okay," he said finally. "But not tonight. Tonight I need to take my daughter home." Elena nodded. "Tomorrow, my office, 9 o'clock. "I have a shift at 8. "Not anymore." She pulled a card from her clutch and pressed it into his palm. "Consider yourself temporarily reassigned." Marcus looked at the card, then at Elena, then at the audience still watching, still waiting to see what would happen next. "Tomorrow," he agreed. He walked off the stage with Sophie's hand in his. Past the silent donors, past the stunned waiters, past Vincent Hale standing frozen like a man who had just witnessed his own irrelevance. At the door, Sophie looked up at him. "Dad?" "Yeah, sweetheart. Can we get ice cream on the way home?" Marcus laughed a real laugh, the first one in years. "Yeah," he said. "I think we can." They walked out into the night, leaving behind a room full of people who would never look at a janitor the same way again. Behind them, the Bosendorfer stood silent on the stage. But for the first time in years, it didn't feel like a graveyard. It felt like a beginning. The ice cream shop on 43rd Street was nearly empty at 11 o'clock at night. Marcus and Sophie sat in a corner booth, 2 cups of mint chocolate chip melting between them. Neither had taken more than a few bites. The adrenaline was still coursing through Marcus's veins, making his hands tremble every time he lifted the spoon. "You're shaking," Sophie said. "I know." "Are you scared?" Marcus considered the question. "No. I think I'm just awake. For the first time in a long time." Sophie pushed her ice cream around with her spoon, creating green rivers in the cup. "That man. The one with the microphone. He was really mean." "Yeah, he was. Why do people like that exist?" Marcus leaned back in the booth. "I don't know, sweetheart. Some people build things. Some people tear them down. I guess it's easier to tear." "But you didn't let him tear you down." "No." Marcus looked at his daughter, really looked at her. "I almost did. I was about to walk away. Did you see that?" Sophie nodded. "I saw. But then you didn't. Because of you." "Because of the lady," Sophie corrected. "The one who told you to play for me." Marcus reached into his pocket and pulled out Elena Ashford's business card. Heavy cardstock, embossed lettering. Elena Ashford, CEO, Ashford Arts Foundation. A phone number, an address on 5th Avenue. "Who is she?" Sophie asked. "I don't know yet, but I think I'm about to find out." They finished their ice cream in comfortable silence. Outside, the city hummed with its usual midnight energy taxis, honking people shouting, the subway rumbling beneath their feet. But inside the little shop, everything felt suspended, like the world was holding its breath. "Dad?" "Yeah." "Will you play for me again, at home?" Marcus felt something crack open in his chest. "We don't have a piano at home, sweetheart." "I know, but maybe we could get one?" He didn't answer. He didn't know how to explain that pianos cost money they didn't have, that their apartment barely fit the furniture they already owned, that some dreams were too expensive to resurrect. Instead, he just reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "Let's go home," he said. "It's late." They walked out into the night, father and daughter, the city swirling around them like music they were only beginning to hear. The next morning came too fast. Marcus had barely slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he was back on that stage, fingers on the keys, 600 faces staring at him. The memory felt like a dream, the kind you wake from and spend the whole day trying to recapture. But it wasn't a dream. His hands still ached from playing. His heart still pounded when he thought about Vincent Hale's face at the end. He dropped Sophie at school at 7:30, kissing her forehead at the gate. "Good luck with the lady," Sophie said. "It's just a meeting." "Sure, Dad." She grinned, Miriam's grin crooked and knowing. "Just a meeting." He watched her disappear into the building, backpack, bouncing braids swinging. Then he turned and walked toward the subway. 5th Avenue was a different world. Marcus had cleaned buildings in Manhattan for years, but he had never walked into one as a guest. The lobby of the Ashford Arts Foundation was all marble and glass, with a reception desk that probably cost more than his annual salary. "Can I help you?" The receptionist looked at him with barely concealed suspicion. He was wearing his cleanest clothes, khakis, a button-down shirt, shoes he had polished that morning, but he still looked like what he was. A janitor. A nobody. "I have an appointment with Miss Ashford, 9 o'clock. The receptionist's eyebrows rose. "Your name?" "Marcus Webb." She typed something into her computer. Her expression shifted surprise, then confusion, then something that looked almost like respect. "Please take a seat, Mr. Webb. Miss Ashford will be with you shortly." Marcus sat in a leather chair that was probably worth more than his car. He waited. The elevator doors opened at exactly 9 o'clock. Elena Ashford walked out wearing a charcoal blazer and black slacks. Her hair pulled back, her face composed. But when she saw Marcus, something flickered in her eyes. Something warm. "You came," she said. "You asked." She smiled, small but real. "Most people don't show up when I ask. They send lawyers." "I don't have a lawyer." "I know. That's why I like you already." She gestured toward the elevator. "Come, we'll talk in my office." They rode up in silence. 32 floors. The numbers climbed, and with each one, Marcus felt the distance between his world and hers growing wider. Elena's office was enormous. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park. A mahogany desk. Shelves lined with awards and photographs. And in the corner, almost hidden, a baby grand piano. Marcus stopped when he saw it. Elena followed his gaze. "I don't play anymore. It's mostly decorative now." "Why did you stop?" She walked to her desk and sat down, gesturing for him to take the chair across from her. "That's a long story, and we're here to talk about you." "Are we?" "Last night you played Chopin's Ballad No. 1 in G minor, from memory, after not touching a piano for how long?" 7 years. Elena leaned forward. 7 years. And you played like that. Do you have any idea how rare that is? Marcus shifted in his chair. "I had a good teacher." "You had more than that." "I've been in this industry for 20 years, Mr. Webb. I've heard hundreds of pianists, thousands. I've sat through recitals at Carnegie Hall and competitions in Vienna, and I have never heard anyone play with that kind of raw emotional honesty." Marcus didn't know what to say. The compliment felt foreign, like a coat that didn't fit. "I looked you up this morning," Elena continued. "Marcus Webb, Juilliard class of 2005, full scholarship. Won the Young Artists competition your junior year. You were supposed to debut with the New York Philharmonic the summer after graduation." Marcus's jaw tightened. That was a long time ago. What happened? The question hung in the air. Marcus could feel it pressing against his chest, demanding an answer he had spent 7 years avoiding. "My wife died," he said finally. "The day our daughter was born. Complications during delivery. One minute she was there holding my hand, telling me everything was going to be fine. The next minute, she was gone." Elena's expression softened. "I'm sorry." "After that I couldn't play. Every time I touched a piano I heard her voice. I saw her face. The music was supposed to be our future concerts recordings, traveling the world together. Without her, it just felt like a monument to everything I had lost." He paused, struggling to keep his voice steady. "So I stopped. I sold my piano. I took the first job I could find. And I raised my daughter the only way I knew how, by surviving." Elena was quiet for a long moment. Then she stood and walked to the window, her back to him. "When I was 16, she said slowly, "I lost a piano competition, state finals. I had practiced for 6 months. I was the favorite to win, and I lost by 2 points. Marcus waited. My mother didn't speak to me for 3 weeks, not a word. She would look through me like I wasn't there. And my father—" Elena's voice caught. "My father suggested that maybe music wasn't practical, that maybe I should focus on something more reliable." She turned to face him. "I never played again. Not once. I went to business school. I built this foundation. I told myself I was giving other people the opportunities I had walked away from. But the truth is, I was running. Just like you." Their eyes met. "We're not so different," Elena said quietly. "Both of us hiding from the thing we love most." Marcus stood slowly. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I want to make you an offer. And I need you to understand that it's not charity. It's not pity. It's something else entirely. What kind of offer? Elena walked back to her desk and picked up a folder. She handed it to him. The Ashford Foundation runs a music education program for underserved communities, schools, veterans centers, homeless shelters. We bring in professional musicians to teach and perform. But lately it's felt hollow, polished, like we're checking boxes instead of changing lives. Marcus opened the folder. Inside were photos, kids at keyboards, elderly veterans with guitars, teenagers learning to read sheet music. I want something different, Elena continued. I want music that means something. Music that comes from real experience, real pain, real hope. And after last night, I think you might be the only person who can give us that. Marcus looked up. You want me to teach? I want you to lead the program, design the curriculum, perform at the events, not as a hired musician, as a partner. I'm a janitor. You were a janitor. As of this morning, you're whatever you choose to be. Marcus set the folder down. His hands were shaking again. I don't know if I can do this, he said. Last night was... I don't even know what last night was. A fluke. A moment. I haven't performed in 7 years. I haven't taught anyone anything except my daughter how to tie her shoes. Elena smiled. You taught 600 people how to feel something real last night. That's more than most musicians accomplish in a lifetime. And if I fail, then you fail. But at least you'll have tried. At least you'll have stopped hiding. Marcus thought about Sophie, about her drawing of him at the piano, about the way she had looked at him last night, tears streaming down her face, whispering, "You finally did it." He thought about Miriam, about the promise he had made to her the night before she died, that he would keep playing, keep creating, keep making music for their daughter. He had broken that promise. For 7 years he had broken it every single day. Maybe it was time to start keeping it. Okay, he said. Elena's eyes widened. Okay, I'll do it, but I have conditions. Name them. First, Sophie comes with me. To rehearsals, to events, to everything. She's the only reason I'm standing here. She doesn't get left behind. Done. Second, I don't perform in tuxedos. I don't pretend to be something I'm not. If people want to hear me play, they hear me as I am, a single father who spent 7 years cleaning floors. That's the story. That's the truth. Elena nodded slowly. I wouldn't want it any other way. And third? Marcus hesitated. Third, you play too. Elena's face went pale. What? You said we're both hiding. You said you haven't touched a piano in 23 years. If I'm going to stop running, so are you. We do this together. Or not at all. The silence stretched between them. Marcus could see the war happening behind Elena's eyes, fear battling hope, pride wrestling with longing. Finally she spoke. You don't know what you're asking. Yes, I do. I'm asking you to do exactly what you're asking me to do. Take a chance. Face the thing that scares you. Stop letting the past win. Elena walked to the baby grand in the corner. She ran her fingers along the closed fallboard, the same way Marcus had touched the Bosendorfer the night before. I haven't played in so long, she whispered. I don't even know if I remember how. Only one way to find out. She turned to face him. Her eyes were bright, not with tears, but with something fiercer. Determination. Defiance. Okay, she said. Together. Marcus extended his hand. Elena took it. And in that moment, something shifted. Not just between them, but in the fabric of the story itself. Two strangers bound by loss, by silence, by music that had been waiting patiently for them to come back. The handshake lasted only a few seconds, but it sealed something that would change both of their lives. So, Elena said, releasing his hand. When do we start? Now. She blinked. Now I have meetings, calls, a foundation to run. Cancel them. I can't just... You're the CEO. You can do whatever you want. Marcus walked to the baby grand and lifted the fallboard. The keys gleamed in the morning light, dusty, but waiting. You asked me to stop hiding. I'm asking you to do the same. Right now. In the next 5 minutes. Elena stared at him. Then slowly she pulled out her phone and pressed a button. Janet, clear my morning. All of it. Something came up. She hung up before her assistant could respond. There, she said. Happy? Not yet. Marcus sat down at the piano and patted the bench beside him. Sit. Elena didn't move. I haven't played in 23 years. I know. I'll be terrible. Probably. This is insane. Definitely. She laughed a real laugh, surprised and bright. Then she walked over and sat beside him on the bench. What do I play? She asked. Whatever you remember. Elena closed her eyes. Her hands hovered over the keys, trembling slightly. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then she pressed a single note. Middle C. Soft. Uncertain. The sound filled the office like a question. That's a start, Marcus said. It's one note. Every piece of music ever written started with one note. Keep going. Elena pressed another key, then another. Slowly, haltingly, a melody began to emerge, broken and imperfect, but recognizable. Beethoven. Für Elise, the first piece she had ever learned. She stopped after the first phrase. I can't remember the rest. That's okay. You remembered enough. Elena opened her eyes. They were wet. How do you do it? She asked. How do you play with all that pain inside you and not fall apart? Marcus considered the question. I used to think the pain was the enemy, he said. I used to think I had to get rid of it before I could play again. But last night I realized something. The pain isn't separate from the music. It is the music. Every note I played was grief and love and hope and fear all tangled up together. And somehow when I let it out through my fingers, it stopped hurting so much. Elena wiped her eyes. I've spent 23 years trying to outrun my pain, building companies, making money, proving to my mother that I was worth something even if I couldn't win competitions. Did it work? No. She laughed bitterly. I'm the CEO of an arts foundation and I can't even play Für Elise without crying. Maybe that's exactly where you need to start. They sat in silence for a moment, side by side, on the piano bench, the city sprawling beneath them, like a map of all the places they had never been. I should warn you, Elena said finally. Vincent Hale isn't going to let last night go. He's vindictive. He's petty. And you embarrassed him in front of every important person in New York. I didn't embarrass him. He embarrassed himself. He won't see it that way. He'll come after you, your reputation, your past, anything he can find. Marcus shrugged. Let him. I've got nothing to hide. I'm a janitor who used to play piano. That's the whole story. It's not the whole story, and you know it. He looked at her. What do you mean? I mean you're more than your tragedy, Marcus. More than your wife's death. More than 7 years of cleaning floors. You're a father, a musician, a man who walked onto that stage last night and made 600 people remember what it feels like to be human. She paused. That's not nothing. That's everything. Marcus didn't respond. He didn't know how. Instead, he placed his hands on the keys. Watch, he said, and listen. He began to play, not Chopin this time, but something simpler. A lullaby. The one he had written for Sophie before she was born. The one he had never finished. The melody was gentle, tender, full of all the things he couldn't say out loud. It rose and fell like breathing, like heartbeat, like the rhythm of a life being lived one day at a time. Elena listened without moving. When he finished, she was crying again. What was that? She whispered. Sophie's Lullaby. I wrote it 7 years ago. Never finished it. It sounded finished to me. Marcus shook his head. It's missing something. I don't know what. I've been trying to figure it out for 7 years. Maybe you'll find it, Elena said. Now that you're playing again. Maybe. He stood up from the bench. I should go, he said. Sophie gets out of school at 3, and I need to figure out how to explain to a 9-year-old that her dad isn't a janitor anymore. Elena stood too. I'll have the paperwork ready by tomorrow. Salary, benefits, everything. You start next Monday. And what about you? She looked at the piano. What about me? You said we'd do this together. That means you practice too, every day, even when it hurts, especially when it hurts. Elena's jaw tightened. I don't know if I can promise that. You don't have to promise, just try. He walked toward the door. Marcus? He turned. Elena was standing by the piano, one hand resting on the fallboard, looking more vulnerable than he had ever seen her. Thank you, she said, for pushing me, for not letting me hide. Thanks, Sophie. She's the one who taught me that hiding doesn't work. He left before she could respond. In the elevator, Marcus closed his eyes and let out a breath he didn't know he had been holding. The numbers descended 32, 31, 30, each one bringing him closer to the ground, to the city, to the life that was waiting for him. Everything was different now. He didn't know if he was ready for it. He didn't know if he would succeed or fail, if the world would accept him or reject him, if the music would keep coming or disappear again. But for the first time in 7 years, he wasn't afraid to find out. The elevator doors opened. Marcus walked out into the lobby past the receptionist, who now looked at him with something like respect, through the glass doors and onto Fifth Avenue, where the city roared and pulsed and sang its endless, chaotic song. He checked his watch. 3 hours until Sophie got out of school. 3 hours to figure out the rest of his life. Marcus smiled. It wasn't enough time. But then again, it never was. He started walking, and the city swallowed him whole. Sophie was waiting at the school gate when Marcus arrived. She spotted him from across the street, and her face changed confusion, first, then concern. He was never early. He was always rushing, always apologizing, always 10 minutes behind. Dad! She ran toward him. What happened? Did you get fired? Marcus laughed. Why would you think that? Because you're here. You're never here this early. Something's wrong. He knelt down so they were eye to eye. Something's different. Not wrong. Different. Sophie studied his face with that uncanny perception she had inherited from her mother. You look weird. Weird how? Happy weird. Like you ate something that disagreed with you, but in a good way. Marcus laughed again. He couldn't help it. The joy was bubbling up inside him, foreign and strange after so many years of just getting by. Let's go get some food, he said. I have something to tell you. They found a diner 3 blocks from the school, the kind with cracked vinyl booths and a menu that hadn't changed since 1985. Sophie ordered pancakes even though it was 3 in the afternoon. Marcus ordered coffee and watched his daughter pour an obscene amount of syrup onto her plate. So, Sophie said between bites. What's the thing? What thing? The thing you have to tell me. The reason you look like you swallowed a balloon. Marcus took a breath. I got a new job. Sophie's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. What kind of job? Teaching piano. And performing. For the Ashford Foundation. The lady from last night. The one who told you to play for me. That's the one. Sophie set down her fork. Her eyes were wide, searching his face for something confirmation maybe. Proof that this was real. Does that mean you're going to play again? Like for real? For real? Every day. Every day. Sophie was quiet for a long moment. Then her face crumpled, and she started to cry. Marcus reached across the table. Hey, sweetheart, what's wrong? Nothing's wrong. She wiped her eyes with her napkin. I've been waiting for this. For so long. I used to pray every night that you would play again. I never told you because I didn't want you to feel bad. But I wanted it so much, Dad. I wanted it so much. Marcus's throat tightened. He moved to her side of the booth and pulled her into his arms. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm sorry I made you wait. Don't be sorry. Sophie's voice was muffled against his chest. Just don't stop. Promise me you won't stop again. I promise. They held each other in the cracked vinyl booth while the waitress pretended not to notice, while the world outside kept spinning, while something that had been broken for 7 years finally began to heal. The first week passed in a blur. Marcus spent his days at the Ashford Foundation meeting with program coordinators, reviewing curricula, visiting schools that would host the new music initiative. Elena had given him an office, a small one barely bigger than a closet, but it had a window and a desk and a nameplate on the door that said, Marcus Webb, Director of Community Music Programs. Director. Him. A man who had been mopping floors 2 weeks ago. You're staring at the nameplate again. Elena appeared in his doorway, coffee in hand. You've been doing that every morning since you started. Marcus shrugged. Still doesn't feel real. Want me to pinch you? I'll pass. She smiled and walked in, setting a folder on his desk. First school visit is tomorrow, PS 147 in the Bronx. 20 kids ages 8 to 12. Most of them have never touched a piano. Marcus opened the folder. Photos of children, permission slips, a schedule. This was really happening. Nervous? Elena asked. Terrified. Good. That means you care. She paused. I'll be there too, if you want. You don't have to babysit me. I'm not babysitting. I'm observing. It's my foundation, remember? Right. Your foundation that you're using to avoid practicing piano. Elena's smile faded. Low blow. Truth hurts. They stared at each other. Marcus could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her jaw tightened whenever the subject of her playing came up. I've been practicing, she said quietly. Every night, in my apartment, alone. How's it going? Terrible. I can barely get through a scale without wanting to throw something. That's normal. Is it because it feels like failure? Marcus stood and walked to the window. The city sprawled beneath them, millions of lives intersecting and diverging like notes in an infinite symphony. When Miriam died, he said, I couldn't even look at a piano. The sight of one made me physically sick. I had panic attacks, nightmares. I would wake up hearing music that wasn't there. Elena was silent behind him. But you know what scared me most? It wasn't the pain. It was the fear that I would never feel anything again, that I had used up all my emotions on grief, and there was nothing left for music. He turned to face her. That's what you're feeling now. The frustration, the anger, the sense that you're failing. That's not failure. That's everything you've been suppressing for 23 years trying to get out. Let it. Elena's eyes were bright. How do you know all this? Because I'm still living it. Every day. The only difference is, I stopped running. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. Tomorrow, she said, after the school visit, you'll help me practice. Only if you actually try. I'll try. Then I'll help. She left without another word, but something had shifted between them. Marcus could feel it, a thread connecting them, invisible but strong. He looked back at the nameplate on his door. Still didn't feel real, but maybe that was okay. The article appeared on Thursday. Marcus was eating breakfast with Sophie when his phone started buzzing, then buzzing again and again. He picked it up and saw 17 missed calls, all from numbers he didn't recognize. That's weird, Sophie said, peering at the screen. Are you famous now? I don't think so. He opened his email. The first message was from Elena, sent at 6 in the morning. "Call me immediately. It's about Vincent Hale." Marcus's stomach dropped. He called. Elena answered on the first ring. "Have you seen the Chronicle?" "No. What happened?" "Vincent published a piece. Front page of the arts section. It's... Marcus. It's bad." He found the article online while Sophie finished her cereal. The headline made his blood run cold. "The Janitor Pianist, A Fraud's Rise and Fall," by Vincent Hale. Marcus's hands trembled as he scrolled through the text. Vincent had done his research. Every detail of Marcus's past was there: Juilliard, the Young Artists Competition, the planned debut with the New York Philharmonic. But twisted, distorted, made to look like something shameful. Sources close to the Juilliard administration confirmed that Marcus Webb withdrew from the program under mysterious circumstances in 2005. While the official story involves a family tragedy, insiders suggest a more troubling pattern of instability and erratic behavior that made him unsuitable for professional performance. "That's a lie," Marcus whispered. "Keep reading," Elena said on the phone. "It gets worse." It did. The Ashford Foundation's decision to hire a former janitor with no teaching credentials and a questionable professional history raises serious questions about Elena Ashford's judgment. Is this charity or a publicity stunt? Either way, the children enrolled in these programs deserve better than a broken man chasing past glory. Sophie looked up from her cereal. "Dad, you look pale." Marcus closed the laptop. "I have to go," he said to Elena. "Marcus, wait. Don't do anything." He hung up. The subway ride to the Chronicle's offices took 45 minutes. Marcus spent every second of it trying to calm down, trying to breathe, trying not to imagine what he would do when he saw Vincent Hale's face. The receptionist at the Chronicle looked startled when he walked in. "I need to see Vincent Hale." "Do you have an appointment?" "No." "Then I'm afraid." "Tell him Marcus Webb is here, the janitor pianist. He'll want to see me." The receptionist hesitated, then picked up the phone. A brief conversation, a longer pause. Then she looked up. "Third floor, office at the end of the hall." Vincent was waiting for him. He sat behind a cluttered desk surrounded by books and awards and photographs of himself shaking hands with famous musicians. He didn't stand when Marcus entered. He just smiled. "Mr. Webb, I was wondering when you'd show up." Marcus closed the door behind him. "Retract the article." Vincent laughed. "Excuse me. You lied. You know you lied. Mysterious circumstances, erratic behavior. None of that is true." "Isn't it?" Vincent leaned back in his chair. "I spoke to several sources, former colleagues, administrators. They all painted the same picture: a talented but unstable young man who cracked under pressure. My wife died." Marcus's voice was barely controlled. "I withdrew from Juilliard because my wife died giving birth to our daughter. There was nothing mysterious about it. Nothing erratic. I was destroyed, and I did what I had to do to survive." Vincent's smile didn't waver. "That's a touching story. But stories can be told many ways. I simply told it a different way. You destroyed my reputation." "You had no reputation. You were invisible, a janitor, a nobody. I simply reminded people what happens when nobodies try to play with the professionals." Marcus took a step forward. His fists were clenched so tight, his nails bit into his palms. "You're angry," Vincent observed. "That's understandable. But before you do something you'll regret, consider this: I am the most powerful music critic in New York. One word from me, and every door in this industry closes. Every venue, every orchestra, every opportunity." He paused. "Walk away now, and I might let you keep your little teaching job. Make a scene, and I will bury you." Marcus stood frozen. Every instinct told him to grab Vincent by the collar, to shake him, to demand justice. But he thought of Sophie. He thought of the kids at PS 147, waiting for their first piano lesson. He thought of Elena sitting in her apartment trying to play again. He couldn't let Vincent take that away. "You think you have power," Marcus said slowly. "You think because you write columns and give speeches and decide who gets noticed, that makes you important. But you're wrong." Vincent's smile flickered. Power isn't about tearing people down. It's about building them up. It's about taking something broken and making it beautiful. That's what music is. That's what I do. And nothing you write, no article, no review, no column can take that away from me. He turned toward the door. "This isn't over," Vincent called after him. "I'll keep writing. I'll keep digging. Sooner or later I'll find something real." Marcus looked back over his shoulder. "Then dig. Because you won't find anything except a man who lost everything and kept going anyway. And that story, my story, is stronger than any lie you can tell." He walked out. In the elevator his hands were still shaking, but his heart was calm. He had looked into the face of the man who wanted to destroy him, and he had walked away intact. That was enough. For now. Elena was waiting in his office when he got back. "You went to see him." "I did." "And?" "He's not going to stop. He's going to keep coming after me. After us. After everything we're trying to build." Elena nodded slowly. "I know. I've dealt with Vincent for years. He doesn't forgive. He doesn't forget. He just persists, like a disease." "So what do we do?" She walked to the window, arms crossed. "We do what we planned. We teach. We perform. We show people what music can be when it comes from truth instead of ambition. And we let Vincent Hale write whatever he wants because in the end, the work will speak louder than his words." Marcus wanted to believe her. He wanted to believe that truth was enough, that goodness would win, that the story would end the way it was supposed to. But he had lived too long to be that naive. "There's something else," Elena said, turning to face him. "The board saw the article. They're concerned. About me. About the foundation's reputation. They're calling an emergency meeting tomorrow. They want to discuss the situation." Marcus's stomach dropped. "Are they going to fire me?" "They can't fire you. I won't let them. But they might pressure me to distance the foundation from you. Put the program on hold. Wait for the controversy to die down. Which would mean the kids at PS 147 don't get their lessons. Which would mean exactly that." Marcus sat down heavily in his chair. 24 hours ago, he had been on top of the world. Now everything was falling apart. "I should quit," he said. "Make it easy for everyone. Step back, let the storm pass." "No." Elena's voice was sharp. "You don't get to quit. Not now. Not after everything." "But if the board can go to hell." She walked toward him, her eyes fierce. "You made me a promise. You said we would do this together. You said you would help me play again. You don't get to walk away just because some bitter old man wrote a nasty article." Marcus looked up at her. "What if I'm not strong enough?" "You are." "How do you know?" "Because I saw you on that stage. I saw you play with 600 people watching after 7 years of silence, after everything you lost. That wasn't weakness. That was the strongest thing I've ever seen." She knelt in front of him, taking his hands in hers. "We're going to fight this. Together. And we're going to win. Not because we're powerful, not because we're connected, but because we're right. And sometimes, Marcus, that's enough." He looked at her hands holding his. Steady. Warm. Real. "Okay," he said. "Together." Together. They stayed like that for a long moment. Two broken people holding each other up, finding strength in the connection they had never expected to make. Then Elena stood businesslike again. "The school visit is still on for tomorrow. I'll handle the board. You focus on the kids. And Vincent. Let me worry about Vincent. I've been fighting men like him my whole life. He doesn't know what he's up against. Marcus believed her. The next morning, Marcus stood in front of 20 children who had never touched a piano. They looked at him with eyes that ranged from curious to skeptical to completely uninterested. A few were fidgeting. One was picking his nose. Another was trying to start a fight with her neighbor. Marcus had never been more terrified in his life. "Good morning," he said. "My name is Marcus." Silence. "I'm here to teach you piano." More silence. Then a hand shot up. A boy in the front row, maybe 8 years old, with glasses too big for his face. "Are you the janitor guy from the video?" Marcus blinked. "What video?" "The one where you play piano at the fancy party and make everyone cry. My mom showed me. She said you were really good." Yes, that was me." The boy grinned. "Cool. Can you teach me to do that?" Something loosened in Marcus's chest. "That's exactly what I'm going to try to do." He sat down at the keyboard they had set up in the classroom. Nothing fancy, just an electric piano with weighted keys. The children gathered around, suddenly interested. "Music isn't about being perfect," Marcus said. "It's about feeling something and finding a way to share it. Anyone can learn to play notes. The hard part is learning to play your heart." A girl in the back raised her hand. "What if your heart is sad?" Marcus looked at her. She was small, quiet, with eyes that seemed too old for her face. "Then you play sad music," he said. "And sometimes playing it makes it hurt a little less." The girl nodded slowly. "My grandma died last month." "I'm sorry." "She used to sing to me. I miss her songs." Marcus stood and walked to the girl. He knelt down so they were eye to eye. "What was her favorite song?" The girl thought for a moment. "Amazing Grace." Marcus smiled. "I know that one. Want to learn it?" Her eyes widened. "Can I? That's why I'm here." He led her to the keyboard and sat her on the bench. Her small fingers hovered over the keys, uncertain. "Start here," Marcus said, guiding her hand. "This is G. Press it gently." She pressed the key. A single note rang out soft and pure. "That's the first note of Amazing Grace. You just played it." The girl looked up at him, and for the first time she smiled. "I played music." "Yes, you did." Behind them, the other children crowded closer, wanting their turn, wanting to feel what she had felt. And Marcus, watching their faces, felt something he hadn't felt in 7 years. Purpose. Elena watched from the doorway. She had told Marcus she would be observing, but that wasn't the whole truth. She needed to see this. She needed to remember why she had started the foundation in the first place. The boardroom meetings, the budgets, the politics, somewhere along the way, she had lost sight of the reason. But watching Marcus teach, watching those children light up at the sound of a single note, she remembered. This was why. This was always why. After the class ended and the children had filed out, Marcus found her still standing in the doorway. "You're crying," he said. Elena wiped her eyes quickly. "No, I'm not." "You're a terrible liar." "I'm an excellent liar. I'm a CEO." He laughed, and she found herself laughing too. And for a moment, the weight of Vincent Hale and the board meeting and everything else fell away. "That little girl," Elena said. "The one who lost her grandmother. Maria. She reminded me of myself. When I was that age, I had just started lessons. My teacher would play Amazing Grace at the end of every class. It was my favorite part." Marcus stepped closer. "What happened to your teacher?" "She moved away when I was 10. After that, it was all competitions, all pressure, all proving myself." Elena looked down. "I never played Amazing Grace again." "Do you remember it?" "I don't know. Maybe." Marcus held out his hand. "Come on." "What?" "You said you would practice. I said I would help. No time like the present." Elena looked at his hand, then at the keyboard where 20 children had just learned their first notes. "Here now." "Why not?" Because I'm terrified. Good. That means you're alive. She took his hand. They walked to the keyboard together, and Elena sat down on the bench. Her fingers trembled above the keys. I can't do this. Yes, you can. What if I've forgotten everything? Then you'll remember. It's still in there, Elena. It never left. She took a deep breath, closed her eyes, and began to play. The melody was hesitant at first, stumbling over notes she hadn't touched in decades. But slowly, painfully, it emerged. Amazing grace. The song she had loved as a child. The song she had abandoned along with everything else. By the second verse, she was crying. By the third verse, she was singing. Marcus stood beside her, not touching, not speaking, just present. Bearing witness to the moment when Elena Ashford stopped being a CEO and became a musician again. When the song ended, she sat motionless, hands still on the keys, tears streaming down her face. I remembered, she whispered. You did. She looked up at him. How do you do it? How do you face the fear every single time? Marcus thought about Sophie, about Miriam, about all the years of silence and all the music that had been waiting. I don't face it alone, he said. And neither do you. Not anymore. Elena stood slowly. For a moment they just looked at each other, two people who had been drowning and had somehow found solid ground. Then she did something unexpected. She hugged him. It wasn't romantic, it wasn't planned. It was just two human beings holding on to each other in the wreckage of their carefully constructed walls. Thank you, she said into his shoulder. For what? For making me remember who I was, before I forgot. Marcus held her tighter. Anytime. They walked out of the school together into the afternoon sun. Two people who had started as strangers and become something neither of them had words for yet. Behind them, the keyboard sat silent in the empty classroom. But it wasn't silent anymore. Not really. It was waiting, just like they had been, just like the music had been, waiting for someone brave enough to play. The board meeting was scheduled for 2 o'clock. Elena arrived at 1:30, dressed in her sharpest suit, her face a mask of calm control. But Marcus could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her jaw tightened every time someone mentioned Vincent Hale's article. You don't have to be here for this, she said when she saw him waiting outside the conference room. Yes, I do. They're going to attack you. They're going to question everything, your credentials, your past, your stability. It's going to be brutal. I've survived worse. Elena looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded. Stay close, and whatever happens, don't let them see you break. The boardroom was full when they walked in. 12 faces stared back at them, mostly men, mostly old, mostly wearing expressions that ranged from concerned to openly hostile. At the head of the table sat Richard Pemberton, the board chairman, a man who had made his fortune in hedge funds and treated philanthropy like a tax strategy. Miss Ashford, Pemberton said without standing, thank you for joining us, and this must be Mr. Webb. Marcus is the director of our community music program, Elena said smoothly. I thought it appropriate that he be present for any discussion involving his position. Indeed. Pemberton's eyes flickered to Marcus, assessing dismissing. Please sit. They sat. I assume you've all seen the article in the Chronicle, Pemberton began. Mr. Hale raises some concerning points about the Foundation's recent hiring decisions. Mr. Hale is a vindictive critic with a personal grudge, Elena said. His article is full of innuendo and unsubstantiated claims. Be that as it may, the optics are troubling. A woman to Pemberton's left, Margaret Chen, if Marcus remembered correctly, leaned forward. We've had calls from donors, questions about whether the Foundation is being managed responsibly. The Foundation is being managed exactly as it should be, Elena replied. We hired a talented musician to run an innovative program. The fact that he spent time working as a janitor doesn't diminish his qualifications, it enhances them. That's a matter of perspective, another board member interjected. a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses. From where I sit, it looks like we hired someone with no teaching experience, no professional performance history in the past decade, and a background that the press can easily exploit. His background is what makes him perfect for this role. Elena's voice hardened. He understands what it means to struggle, to lose everything and rebuild. That's exactly what the children in these programs need to see. What they need, Pemberton cut in, is stability, credibility, not controversy. Marcus had been silent until now. He could feel the eyes on him, curious, suspicious, waiting for him to crack. He didn't. "May I speak?" he asked. Pemberton raised an eyebrow. "By all means." Marcus stood slowly. His heart was pounding, but his voice came out steady. 3 days ago, I taught a class at PS 147 in the Bronx. 20 kids. Most of them had never touched a piano. One of them, a girl named Maria, lost her grandmother last month. She told me her grandmother used to sing Amazing Grace to her. The room was silent. I taught Maria the first notes of that song. Watched her face when she realized she could play something that connected her to someone she lost. That moment, that one moment, is worth more than every article Vincent Hale will ever write. He looked around the table, meeting each pair of eyes. You want to talk about optics, about controversy? Fine. But don't pretend it's about the children. It's about protecting the foundation's brand. It's about making sure your names aren't associated with anything messy or complicated. Pemberton's face reddened. Now see here. I'm not finished. Marcus's voice was calm but firm. I've spent 7 years invisible, cleaning floors, raising my daughter alone, pretending the music didn't matter anymore. And then one night I played a piano in front of 600 people, and everything changed. He paused. You can fire me if you want. You can shut down the program. You can let Vincent Hale win. But know this, what we're building here, what Elena is building here matters. It matters more than your donations, more than your reputations, more than anything you'll discuss in this room today. He sat down. The silence stretched for what felt like hours. Then Margaret Chen spoke. I have a question, Mr. Webb. Yes. The girl you mentioned, Maria. Did she learn the whole song? Marcus blinked. Not yet. We're working on it. Margaret nodded slowly. My mother died when I was 12. She used to play Amazing Grace on our old upright every Sunday morning. I haven't heard that song in 40 years without crying. She looked at Pemberton. Richard, I think we're approaching this the wrong way. We're not in the business of protecting brands. We're in the business of changing lives. And from what I've heard today, that's exactly what Mr. Webb is doing. Another board member, a younger man Marcus didn't recognize, spoke up. I agree. The Chronicle article is a hit piece. Anyone can see that. If we cave to pressure from a critic with a grudge, what does that say about us? Pemberton looked around the room, sensing the shift. His jaw tightened. Very well. We'll table the discussion of Mr. Webb's position, for now. He fixed Marcus with a cold stare. But understand this one more controversy, one more headline, and we will revisit this conversation. Understood, Marcus said. The meeting adjourned. In the hallway, Elena grabbed Marcus's arm and pulled him into an empty conference room. That was either the bravest or the stupidest thing I've ever seen, she said. Which one do you think it was? Both. She was smiling, though. Actually smiling. You told off a room full of millionaires and made them feel guilty about it. That takes talent. I learned from watching you. She laughed, a real laugh, surprised and bright. God, we're a mess, aren't we? 2 broken people trying to hold together a program that half the board wants to kill. At least we're a mess together. Their eyes met. Something passed between them, unspoken, unacknowledged, but undeniably real. Marcus felt it like a current running through his chest. Elena, don't. She held up a hand. Whatever you're about to say, don't. Not now. Not with everything that's happening. When then? She looked at him for a long moment. When we've won, she said quietly. When the program is secure. When Vincent Hale has moved on to destroying someone else. Then we can talk about whatever this is. Marcus nodded slowly. I can wait. Good. She straightened her jacket, composing herself. Because right now we have work to do. The weeks that followed were a blur of activity. Marcus taught classes 3 times a week, PS 147 on Mondays, a veterans center in Queens, on Wednesdays, a community center in Harlem on Fridays. Elena accompanied him to most sessions, ostensibly to observe, but increasingly to participate. She was getting better. Each day she sat at the piano a little longer, played a little more confidently. The fear was still there. Marcus could see it in her eyes every time she lifted the fallboard, but she was fighting through it. You're holding your breath again, Marcus said during one of their practice sessions in her office. Elena stopped playing. I didn't realize. When you hold your breath, your shoulders tense up. Your shoulders tense up, your fingers tighten. Your fingers tighten, the music suffers. How do I stop? Breathe with the phrases. Let the music tell you when to inhale, when to exhale, like a conversation. She tried again. This time her playing was smoother, more fluid, not perfect, but alive. Better, Marcus said. It still sounds amateur. It sounds honest. That's worth more than perfection. Elena looked at him. You really believe that, don't you? I believe that music isn't about impressing people. It's about connecting with them. And you can't connect if you're too busy being perfect. She turned back to the piano, her fingers hovering over the keys. My mother used to say the opposite. She said perfection was the only thing that mattered, that anything less was weakness. Your mother was wrong. Elena's hands trembled slightly. I know. But knowing something and believing it are 2 different things. Marcus sat beside her on the bench. Play something for me, he said. Not Amazing Grace, not anything you've practiced. Something you remember from when you were young, before the competitions, before your mother's expectations. What did you play when no one was listening? Elena closed her eyes. For a long moment she didn't move. Then her fingers found the keys. The melody was simple, a folk song maybe, or a lullaby. Marcus didn't recognize it, but he could hear the history in every note. This was music from before the walls went up. Music from a time when Elena still believed that playing could be joyful. She played for 3 minutes without stopping. When she finished, her cheeks were wet. I haven't played that since I was 7, she whispered. What is it? Something my grandmother taught me, before she passed. It doesn't have a name. I just called it Grandma's song. Marcus smiled. It's beautiful. It's not. It's clumsy and childish and... It's beautiful, he repeated. Because it's yours. Because it means something. That's what you've been missing all these years. Not technique. Not practice. Meaning. Elena wiped her eyes. How do you always know exactly what to say? I don't. I just tell the truth. She looked at him, really looked at him, and Marcus felt the air shift between them again. That pull, that undeniable gravitational force drawing them closer. Marcus? I know. Not yet. Soon. I can wait. Sophie was thriving. She came to Marcus's classes whenever she could, sitting in the back with her sketchbook drawing the children at the keyboards, the veterans with their guitars, the community members finding music for the first time. Dad, look at this one. She showed him a drawing one evening, a portrait of Maria at the piano, her small fingers stretched over the keys, her face illuminated with concentration. That's incredible, sweetheart. Maria's getting really good. She can play the whole first verse now. I know. She practices every day. Sophie was quiet for a moment. Dad. Yeah. Do you think Mom would be proud of what you're doing? Marcus felt his chest tighten. Miriam, Even now, even after everything, her absence was a wound that never fully healed. "I think she would," he said carefully. "She always believed music could change people, make them better, happier." "Do you miss her?" "Every day." "Me too." Sophie leaned against him. "But I think it hurts less now. Because we're not just remembering her. We're doing what she would have wanted." Marcus put his arm around his daughter and held her close. "You're too wise for 9 years old." "I know. It's exhausting." He laughed, and she laughed with him, and for a moment, everything felt exactly right. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon. Marcus was in his office reviewing curriculum materials when his phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello?" "Mr. Webb." A woman's voice unfamiliar. "This is Patricia Kellerman from the New York Times. I'm writing a piece about community music education and your name came up. Do you have a few minutes to talk?" Marcus's guard went up immediately. After Vincent Hale's article, he didn't trust journalists. "What kind of piece?" "A profile." "Actually, we've been hearing incredible things about the Ashford Foundation's new program. Several of our readers have reached out about your work in the Bronx and Queens. They want to know more about the man behind it. And this isn't connected to Vincent Hale in any way." A pause. Then, "I'm aware of the Chronicle article. That's actually part of why I'm calling. Several people in the music community felt that piece was unfair. We'd like to give you an opportunity to tell your side of the story." Marcus thought about it. The risk. The exposure. The possibility of another hit piece disguised as a human interest story. But also the opportunity. The chance to reach people. To show them what music education could really be. "Okay," he said. "But I have conditions." "Name them." "First, you talk to my students, not just me. I want you to hear what this program means to them." "Done." "Second, Elena Ashford is part of this story. If you write about me, you write about her too. We're partners." "Of course." "And third, no ambush questions. If you want to ask about my past, ask me directly. Don't dig through sources behind my back." Another pause. "Fair enough. When can we meet?" "Tomorrow, PS 147. Come see us in action." He hung up and immediately called Elena. "The New York Times wants to do a story," he said. Silence. Then, "Are you sure that's wise?" "No, but I'm tired of hiding. I'm tired of letting Vincent Hale control the narrative. If we're going to build something real, people need to know about it. The right people. And if it backfires, then at least we tried." Elena was quiet for a long moment. "Okay," she said finally. "But I'm coming too. If this goes wrong, we go down together. I wouldn't have it any other way." The Times reporter arrived at PS 147 the next afternoon. Patricia Kellerman was in her 50s, sharp-eyed and professional, with a recorder in one hand and a notebook in the other. She watched Marcus teach without interrupting, taking notes occasionally, photographing the children at their keyboards. After class, she interviewed Maria. "What do you like about piano lessons?" Patricia asked. Maria thought for a moment. "Mr. Webb doesn't make me feel stupid. When I mess up, he just says, 'Try again.' My teacher at school gets mad when I mess up." "And what have you learned?" "I learned Amazing Grace. For my grandma. She died, but now I can play her favorite song. It's like she's still here, kind of." Patricia's pen stopped moving. She looked at Maria with something Marcus couldn't quite read, surprise maybe, or recognition. "That's beautiful," Patricia said quietly. "Mr. Webb taught me that music remembers people, even when they're gone." Later, Patricia interviewed Marcus and Elena together. She asked about the program, about their backgrounds, about their partnership. "There's been some controversy," Patricia said carefully. "The Chronicle article raised questions about Mr. Webb's qualifications." "The Chronicle article was a hit piece," Elena said flatly. "Written by a man who was publicly humiliated when Marcus outplayed his expectations. There's nothing substantive in it. And the claims about his past. The suggestion that he left Juilliard under mysterious circumstances. Marcus met her eyes. My wife died, the day our daughter was born. I was destroyed. I dropped out because I couldn't function, not because I was unstable. There's no mystery. Just grief. Patricia nodded slowly. I'm sorry for your loss. Thank you. One more question. Vincent Hale has been very vocal about his opposition to this program. He's suggested that the foundation is using you as a publicity stunt. How do you respond? Marcus looked at Elena. She nodded slightly. Vincent Hale doesn't understand what we're doing, Marcus said. He sees music as a commodity, something to be judged, ranked, criticized. But music isn't about critics. It's about the girl who learns her grandmother's favorite song. The veteran who plays guitar for the first time since coming home from war. The community that gathers around a piano and remembers what it feels like to be human. He paused. If that's a publicity stunt, then I'm guilty. But I think it's something else. I think it's proof that music still matters. That it can still heal. And no article, no review, no criticism can take that away. Patricia turned off her recorder. Off the record, she said. I've been covering the arts for 20 years. I've seen a lot of programs come and go. Most of them are exactly what Hale described vanity projects dressed up as philanthropy. Marcus's stomach tightened. But this isn't that. Patricia smiled. This is real. I can see it in those kids' faces. I can hear it in how you talk about the work. And I'm going to write a story that reflects that. Thank you, Elena said. Don't thank me yet. The story still has to get past my editors, but I think they'll see what I see. She shook their hands and left. Marcus and Elena stood in the empty classroom, the keyboards silent around them. Do you think she meant it? Elena asked. I think so. What if she didn't? What if it's another trap? Marcus looked at her. Then we deal with it, together. Elena smiled, a real smile, warm and unguarded. You keep saying that. Together. Because it's true. Is it? She stepped closer. Because I've spent my whole life doing things alone. Fighting alone. Winning alone. Losing alone. I don't know how to do this. She gestured between them. Whatever this is. Neither do I. Marcus reached out and took her hand. But I'm willing to learn, if you are. Elena looked at their joined hands. Her fingers tightened around his. I'm scared, she said quietly. Me too. What if we ruin everything? The program, the partnership, all of it. Then at least we'll have tried. At least we'll have lived. That's more than either of us has done in a long time. She looked up at him. Her eyes were bright, vulnerable in a way he had never seen before. Marcus, I know you said we should wait. Until we've won. Until everything is secure. I did say that. Was it true, or were you just scared? Elena didn't answer. She just stood there, her hand in his, the silence stretching between them like a held breath. Then she stepped forward and kissed him. It was soft, at first tentative questioning. But then something broke open, and the kiss deepened, and Marcus felt 7 years of loneliness dissolving like ice in spring. When they finally pulled apart, they were both breathing hard. That wasn't waiting, Elena said. No, it wasn't. Are we making a mistake? Marcus looked at her, this woman who had challenged him, pushed him, seen him at his worst, and believed in him anyway. I don't know, he said honestly. But it doesn't feel like a mistake. She smiled. No, it doesn't. They stood together in the empty classroom, hands intertwined, two people who had been drowning separately and had somehow found each other in the flood. Outside, the city hummed with its endless noise. Children shouted in the playground. Cars honked. Life went on. But in that moment, in that room, everything was quiet. Everything was still. Everything was exactly where it was supposed to be. The New York Times article came out 3 weeks later. The janitor who played inside the music program changing lives in New York's underserved communities. It was everything Patricia had promised, thoughtful fare focused on the students and the work rather than the controversy. Maria was quoted. So was the veteran from Queens who had learned to play guitar after losing his leg in Afghanistan. So was Elena speaking about the Foundation's mission and her partnership with Marcus. The response was immediate. Donations poured in. Schools requested to join the program. News outlets picked up the story. Within a week, Marcus had more interview requests than he could handle. And Vincent Hale went silent. Not quietly, not gracefully. He simply stopped writing about them. His column moved on to other targets, other controversies. It was as if the Times article had rendered his attacks irrelevant. "We won," Elena said, standing in Marcus's office, the newspaper spread on his desk. "We actually won." Marcus looked at the article, at the photo of Maria at the piano, at the quotes from students whose lives had been changed. "No," he said. "We haven't won yet. This is just the beginning." "What do you mean?" He looked up at her. "Winning isn't getting good press. It's not silencing critics. Winning is building something that lasts, something that keeps changing lives long after we're gone." Elena sat on the edge of his desk. "When did you become such a philosopher?" "Somewhere between mopping floors and teaching kids to play Amazing Grace." She laughed. "I love that about you, you know. The way you see everything as part of a bigger story." "Do you?" "Do I what?" "Love that about me." The word hung in the air between them. Love. Neither of them had said it yet. Neither had been brave enough. Elena looked at him for a long moment. "Yes," she said quietly. "I do." Marcus stood and walked around the desk. He took her hands in his. "I love you too." She smiled that rare, unguarded smile that he had learned to treasure. "Are we really doing this? We really are. Even though it's complicated, even though we work together, even though the board will have opinions. Especially because of all that." He pulled her close. "I spent 7 years being careful, being safe, being invisible. I'm done. I want to live. I want to feel. I want to love without holding back." Elena kissed him quickly, fiercely. "Then let's do it," she said. "Let's build something real, together." Together. The word that had started as a promise had become something more. A foundation. A future. A life neither of them had dared to imagine. Marcus held her close, and outside the window, the city kept spinning, and the music kept playing, and two people who had been lost in silence finally found their way home. 6 months changed everything. The listening room, that's what they called the program, now had expanded beyond anything Marcus or Elena had imagined. What started as 3 schools and a veterans center had grown into a network of 27 sites across the 5 boroughs. Homeless shelters, senior centers, juvenile detention facilities. Anywhere people needed music, the listening room found them. Marcus stood in the doorway of the old chapel in Brooklyn Heights, watching the renovation crew put the finishing touches on what would become their permanent home. Elena had found the building 3 months ago, abandoned, forgotten its stained glass windows, covered in grime. Now it gleamed. The pews had been replaced with chairs and keyboards. The altar had become a stage. And in the center, where congregations once gathered to pray, a restored baby grand piano waited. "You're doing that thing again," Sophie said, appearing beside him. "What thing?" "The thing where you stare at something and look like you're about to cry, but you're pretending you're not." Marcus laughed. "I'm not pretending." "So you admit you're about to cry?" "Maybe a little." Sophie slipped her hand into his. 10 years old now, but still his anchor. Still the reason he had found his way back. "It's beautiful, Dad." "It is. Mom would have loved it." Marcus's throat tightened. Yeah, she would have. She would. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the workers move through the space. In 2 weeks, the grand opening would bring together everyone who had been part of the journey: students, teachers, donors, supporters. The mayor had even promised to attend. But right now, in this quiet moment, it was just father and daughter standing on the threshold of something neither of them had dared to dream. "Dad." "Yeah." "Are you happy?" Marcus considered the question. For so many years, happiness had felt like a foreign country, something other people visited, something he watched from a distance. But now, "Yes," he said. "I think I finally am." Sophie squeezed his hand. "Good. Because you deserve it." The rehearsals for the grand opening were exhausting. Marcus had assembled a program that showcased everything the listening room had accomplished: performances by students from each site, a video montage of the program's impact speeches from supporters and beneficiaries, and at the end, a piece he had been working on for months: Sophie's lullaby. Complete at last. He hadn't told anyone about it. Not Elena, not Sophie. It was his gift, his surprise, his way of honoring everything that had brought him to this moment. "You're distracted," Elena said during a run-through. She was sitting beside him on the piano bench, their shoulders touching. "What's going on in that head of yours?" "Nothing." "Liar." "Okay, something. But I can't tell you yet." She raised an eyebrow. "Secrets between us." "Not a secret, a surprise. There's a difference." "Is it a good surprise?" Marcus looked at her. This woman who had challenged him, saved him, loved him, when he had forgotten how to love himself. "I think so. I hope so." Elena studied his face for a moment, then nodded. "Okay. I trust you." "Thank you. But if it's a bad surprise, I reserve the right to be angry." "Noted." She kissed him quickly, then stood. "I have a board meeting. Try not to overthink whatever you're overthinking. No promises." She laughed and walked out, leaving Marcus alone with the piano. He placed his hands on the keys and began to play. Not Sophie's lullaby, not yet, but the piece that had started everything. Chopin's Ballade No. 1, the same piece he had played at Hartwell Opera House 9 months ago, when a janitor had reminded the world what music could be. The notes filled the empty chapel, echoing off the restored walls, rising toward the newly cleaned stained glass windows. And as he played, Marcus felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. The week before the grand opening, Vincent Hale resurfaced. Marcus was in his office when Elena burst through the door, her face pale. "He's writing again." "Who?" "Vincent. He's publishing a piece in the Chronicle this weekend. About the grand opening. About us." Marcus's stomach dropped. "What kind of piece?" "I don't know yet. My contact at the paper called to warn me. She said it's not favorable. After everything, after the Times article, after all the positive press." Vincent doesn't care about positive press. He cares about being right. And we embarrassed him, publicly. He's been waiting for this moment. Marcus stood and walked to the window. The city sprawled beneath him, indifferent and eternal. What can he possibly say? The program is thriving. The students are flourishing. We've done everything right. It doesn't matter. He'll find something. A disgruntled donor. An anonymous source. A detail that can be twisted to look damaging. So what do we do? Elena was quiet for a moment. Then she straightened her shoulders. We do nothing. We go forward with the opening. We let our work speak for itself. And if Vincent wants to throw stones, we'll let them bounce off. You make it sound easy. It's not easy. It's necessary. We can't control what he writes. We can only control how we respond. Marcus turned to face her. And how do we respond? By being exactly who we are. A janitor who became a teacher. A CEO who learned to play again. Two people who built something real from the wreckage of their pasts. She walked toward him and took his hands. That's a story no critic can destroy, because it's true. Marcus pulled her close. Have I told you lately how much I love you? Not in the last hour. I love you. I love you too. She pulled back, her eyes fierce. Now let's go show the world what we've built. The Chronicle article appeared on Saturday morning. Marcus read it alone in his apartment, Sophie still asleep in her room. The headline made his blood run cold. The Listening Room, Charity, or Cult of Personality. By Vincent Hale. The piece was everything Elena had predicted. Innuendo dressed as analysis, skepticism, masquerading as journalism. Vincent questioned the program's financial management. Suggested that Marcus's involvement was more about personal redemption than genuine service, and implied that Elena's romantic relationship with her employee raised ethical concerns. It was devastating. And it was too late. The grand opening was in 24 hours. The invitations had been sent. The press had been notified. There was no stopping it now. Marcus's phone rang. Elena. I read it, he said. How are you? Angry, scared, wondering if we should cancel. We're not canceling. Elena. No, listen to me. Her voice was steel. Vincent Hale has been trying to destroy us since the night you walked onto that stage. He's failed every single time. He failed at Hartwell. He failed with the board. He failed when the Times story came out. And he's going to fail now. How can you be sure? Because I know something he doesn't. What? That people aren't stupid. They can read between the lines. They can see the difference between a hit piece and the truth. And tomorrow night, when they walk into that chapel and see what we've built, when they hear our students play, when they feel what the listening room really is, Vincent's words will mean nothing. Marcus wanted to believe her. He wanted to have her faith. What if you're wrong? Then we go down fighting, together, the way we've done everything else. Together, the word that had become their foundation. Okay, Marcus said. Let's do this. The night of the grand opening arrived cold and clear. Marcus stood backstage in the chapel, watching the guests file in, donors, journalists, politicians, supporters. The pews were full. The cameras were ready. The moment he had been building toward for 9 months was finally here. Dad. He turned. Sophie stood behind him wearing a blue dress Elena had helped her pick out. Her hair was braided the way Miriam used to wear hers. She looked so much like her mother that Marcus's heart ached. You look beautiful, sweetheart. I'm nervous. Why? Because you're nervous, I can tell. Marcus knelt down so they were eye to eye. I am nervous. But that's okay. Being nervous means this matters, and this matters more than anything I've ever done. Sophie studied his face. Is it because of the article, The Mean One? You read that. Some of it. Before Elena took it away. She said it was garbage. Is it? Yes, it is. Then why are you scared? Marcus thought about the question. Why was he scared? Not of Vincent Hale, not of critics or skeptics or doubters. He was scared of something deeper. I'm scared because I spent 7 years hiding, he said finally. And tonight, there's nowhere left to hide. Everyone will see me, the real me, and I don't know if that's good enough. Sophie's expression softened. She reached out and took his face in her small hands. Dad, you're good enough. You've always been good enough. Mom knew it. Elena knows it. I know it. The only person who doesn't know it is you. Marcus felt tears prick his eyes. When did you get so wise? I learned from watching you be stupid for 7 years. He laughed a real laugh, surprised and bright, and pulled her into a hug. I love you, Sophie Webb. I love you too, Dad. Now go make Mom proud. The program began with the students. Maria went first, now 11 years old, her fingers confident on the keys. She played Amazing Grace from memory, and by the second verse, half the audience was in tears. Marcus watched from the wings, his heart swelling with pride. After Maria came, the veterans from Queens performing a medley they had arranged themselves. Then the seniors from the Harlem Community Center. Then the teenagers from the juvenile detention facility, their faces defiant but hopeful. Each performance was a testament to what the listening room had built. Not perfection, not polish, just honest music from honest people filling the restored chapel with sounds that meant something. And through it all, Marcus could feel Vincent Hale's words fading into irrelevance. This was the truth. This was what they had created, and no article could erase it. When the student performances ended, Elena took the stage. She stood at the podium, elegant and composed, but Marcus could see the slight tremor in her hands. She was nervous too. After 23 years of hiding from the piano, she was about to play in front of 200 people. "Thank you all for being here tonight," she began. "When Marcus and I started this program, we didn't know what it would become. We just knew that music had saved us, and we wanted to give others the chance to be saved too." She paused, her eyes finding Marcus in the wings. "I spent most of my life running from the piano. I let fear and perfectionism convince me that I wasn't good enough, that I didn't deserve to play, and for 23 years I believed that lie." The audience was silent. But then I met a janitor who reminded me what music was really about. It's not about being perfect. It's not about impressing critics or winning competitions. It's about connection. It's about taking the broken pieces of yourself and turning them into something beautiful. She stepped away from the podium and walked to the piano. "Tonight, for the first time in 23 years, I'm going to play in public. Not because I'm ready, not because I'm good enough, but because I finally understand that music isn't about being ready. It's about being brave." She sat down at the bench, her back straight, her hands hovering over the keys. And then she played. The piece was simple grandma's song, the melody her grandmother had taught her before she died. Elena's fingers were uncertain at first, stumbling over notes she hadn't touched in decades. But as she played, something shifted. The hesitation faded, the fear dissolved, and what emerged was pure, raw, achingly honest music. When she finished, the audience didn't applaud right away. They were too stunned, too moved. Then Maria stood up and started clapping. Then the veterans, then the seniors. And suddenly the entire chapel was on its feet, giving Elena Ashford a standing ovation she had waited 23 years to receive. Elena looked toward the wings, her eyes wet, and Marcus smiled. She had done it. She had finally done it. Then it was his turn. Marcus walked onto the stage, and the applause slowly faded. 200 faces looked up at him, some familiar, some strange, all waiting. 9 months ago, he began. I stood on a stage, very different from this one. I was a janitor. I hadn't touched a piano in 7 years, and a man in the audience thought it would be funny to see me try to play. A few people shifted in their seats. They remembered the video. Everyone remembered the video. What happened that night changed my life, but not because I played well, not because I impressed anyone. It changed my life because I stopped hiding. For the first time in 7 years, I let people see who I really was. He looked at Sophie sitting in the front row beside Elena. When my wife died, I thought music died with her. Every note reminded me of what I had lost. Every chord was grief made audible. So I locked the piano away. I locked myself away. And I spent 7 years pretending that survival was enough. His voice caught, but he pushed through. It wasn't enough. Survival is important, but it's not the same as living. Living means risking. Living means loving. Living means sitting down at a piano when you're terrified and playing anyway. He moved to the bench and sat down. Tonight, I want to play something I've never performed before. Something I started writing 10 years ago, the week before my daughter was born. I couldn't finish it then. The grief was too heavy. The silence was too loud. He placed his hands on the keys. But I finished it now. For Sophie. For Miriam. for everyone who ever thought they had lost their music and learned they were wrong. He closed his eyes, and he played. Sophie's lullaby began softly, a whisper of melody delicate and tender. It was the music Marcus had imagined playing for his daughter in those hopeful days before her birth, when he still believed that love was stronger than loss. The first movement was gentle, full of wonder. The notes painted pictures of tiny fingers and first steps of bedtime stories and morning laughter. It was the music of a father's hope. Then the second movement came darker, heavier, weighted with grief. The harmony shifted into minor keys. The melody fragmented and reformed, struggling against a current of sorrow. This was the music of 7 years of silence, 7 years of mopping floors, 7 years of pretending not to hear the piano calling. But the third movement rose from the ashes. It started quietly, a single note emerging from the darkness. Then another, and another, until the melody rebuilt itself stronger than before. Not the innocent hope of the first movement, but something deeper, something earned. The music swelled and soared, carrying with it every student who had learned to play, every veteran who had found peace, every broken person who had discovered that music could heal what seemed beyond repair. The final chord hung in the air, a major seventh, unresolved but hopeful. The sound of a story still being written. Marcus lifted his hands from the keys. Silence. For 3 heartbeats, no one moved. Then Sophie stood up. She walked to the stage, climbed the steps, and sat beside her father on the piano bench. Her face was wet with tears, but she was smiling. "You finished it," she whispered. "I finished it. It's beautiful, Dad. It's you. It's everything you are and everything you helped me become." Sophie leaned her head against his shoulder. And then the applause began. It started slowly, a few hands tentative and quiet. Then more, and more, until the entire chapel was thundering with sound, 200 people on their feet, giving Marcus Webb the standing ovation he had waited 10 years to receive. But Marcus wasn't looking at them. He was looking at Elena, who stood at the edge of the stage with tears streaming down her face. He was looking at Maria, who was clutching her grandmother's music charm like a talisman. He was looking at the veterans and the seniors and the children who had found their voices through the listening room. And finally, he was looking at Sophie, his daughter, his anchor, his reason for everything. "I love you, sweetheart," he said. "I love you too, Dad." The applause went on for 3 full minutes. When it finally faded, Marcus stood and addressed the crowd one last time. "I want to thank everyone who made this possible. Elena Ashford, who believed in me when I had stopped believing in myself. The board of the Ashford Foundation, who took a chance on a janitor with a dream. Our donors, our supporters, our students. And most of all, my daughter Sophie, who never stopped drawing pictures of me at the piano, even when I had forgotten who I was." He looked around the chapel, the restored stained glass, the gleaming piano, the faces of people whose lives had been touched by music. Someone asked me recently what the listening room is really about. I thought about it for a long time, and the answer I came up with is this. It's about second chances. It's about the belief that no matter how broken you are, no matter how long you've been silent, there's always music waiting inside you. You just have to be brave enough to let it out. He smiled. 9 months ago, I was a janitor who hadn't touched a piano in 7 years. Today, I'm surrounded by people who found their voices because someone believed in them. That's not magic. That's not luck. That's the power of showing up even when you're scared. It's the power of saying yes to something you thought was lost forever. He took Sophie's hand. "We're not done yet. We're just getting started. The listening room will keep growing. More schools, more communities, more people finding their music. And somewhere right now there's another janitor, another widow, another lost soul who thinks they're invisible. We're going to find them. We're going to show them what we've built. And we're going to remind them that their story isn't over." He paused, his voice steady and sure. "Because here's what I've learned, the silence isn't the end. It's just a rest between movements. And the music always comes back. The applause rose again louder this time, and Marcus stood on the stage with his daughter beside him, his partner watching from the wings, and 200 people bearing witness to the truth. He had been invisible. He had been broken. He had been silent for 7 long years. But he wasn't silent anymore. After the gala ended, after the guests had left and the cameras had been packed away, Marcus stood alone in the chapel. The restored piano gleamed under the soft light. The chairs were empty. The stained glass windows reflected the city lights outside like fragments of a dream. He heard footsteps behind him. Elena walked up and slipped her hand into his. "You did it," she said. "We did it." Same thing. They stood together, looking at the space they had built. "I checked the Chronicle's website," Elena said. "Vincent's article is already buried. The coverage of tonight is everywhere. Times, Post, even the national networks picked it up. Does it feel like winning? I don't know. Does it matter?" Marcus thought about the question. "No," he said finally. "It doesn't. Because winning was never the point. The point was Maria learning her grandmother's song. The point was you playing for the first time in 23 years. The point was Sophie finally seeing her father whole. And what about you? What was the point for you?" He turned to face her. "Coming home. That's what tonight was. Coming home to the person I was always supposed to be." Elena reached up and touched his face. "I like that person. I'm starting to like him too." She kissed him slowly, tenderly, and Marcus felt the last of his walls crumble away. "What happens now?" she asked when they pulled apart. "Now we keep going. More programs, more students, more music. And maybe—" He hesitated. "Maybe what?" "Maybe we make this official. You and me." Elena's eyes widened. "Are you asking me to—" "Not yet. Someday. When Sophie's ready. When we've built something that can stand on its own. But I want you to know that's where I'm heading. I want you to know that this isn't temporary. That you're not just my partner in work. You're my partner in everything." Elena was quiet for a long moment. "I've been alone most of my life," she said finally. "Even when I was surrounded by people. I built walls so high I forgot there was anything on the other side. And now I'm standing in a chapel with a man who taught me how to play again. A man who showed me that vulnerability isn't weakness. A man I—" She took a breath. "A man I want to spend the rest of my life with." Marcus smiled. "Is that a yes?" "It's a someday. When Sophie's ready. When we've built something that can stand on its own. I can work with someday. Good, because someday is all I can promise right now. It's enough. It's more than enough." They held each other in the empty chapel, two people who had found each other in the wreckage of their separate lives and built something neither could have imagined alone. Sophie appeared in the doorway. "Are you guys done being gross because I'm hungry?" Marcus and Elena laughed. "We're done," Marcus said. "Good. Can we get pizza?" "It's 11 o'clock at night." "So?" Marcus looked at Elena. She shrugged. "Pizza sounds perfect." The three of them walked out of the chapel together, father, daughter, and the woman who had helped them both find their way home. The city waited outside, cold and bright, full of people who would never know what had happened in this place tonight. But Marcus knew. And that was enough. 3 years later, Marcus stood in the same chapel watching a new class of students take their seats at the keyboards. The listening room had grown beyond anyone's expectations. 53 sites across the country. Thousands of students. A documentary that had won awards at Sundance. A foundation that was changing the conversation about music education in America. But none of that mattered as much as this moment. 12 children ages 7 to 10 about to touch a piano for the first time. "Welcome to the listening room," Marcus said. "My name is Marcus. I used to be a janitor, and I'm going to teach you how to play." A boy in the front row raised his hand. "Are you the guy from the video, the one who played at the fancy party?" Marcus smiled. "That's me. My mom says you made everybody cry." "I did. Can you teach me to do that?" Marcus knelt down so they were eye to eye. "That's exactly what we're going to do. But first, you need to learn something important." "What?" "Music isn't about making people cry. It's about telling the truth. And the truth, your truth, is the most powerful sound in the world." The boy's eyes widened. "My truth. Yours. Whatever you've felt, whatever you've lost, whatever you hope for, it's all music waiting to come out. I'm just going to help you find it." He stood and walked to the front of the room. "Now, let's begin." The children placed their hands on the keys, and the music started again. That night, Marcus sat in his living room, Sophie doing homework at the kitchen table, Elena reading beside him on the couch. The walls were covered with photographs, students at their keyboards performances at the chapel, Maria's graduation from high school last year. A life measured in moments of connection. "Sophie," Marcus called. "Come here for a minute." His daughter walked over 13, now tall and sharp-eyed, and more like her mother every day. "What's up?" Marcus reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Sophie's eyes went wide. "Dad! I'm not asking you to do anything. I just wanted you to see this, before I ask Elena." He opened the box. Inside was a ring, simple, elegant, a diamond set in a band that had been forged from the keys of his old piano, the one he had sold after Miriam died. "I had it made," Marcus said, "from the ivory. I wanted Miriam to be part of this, part of what comes next." Sophie stared at the ring. "It's beautiful. Do I have your permission to ask Elena, Dad?" Sophie looked at him with those eyes that saw everything. "You've had my permission since the first time I saw you smile at her." Marcus pulled his daughter into a hug. "I love you, Sophie Webb." "I love you too, Dad. Now go ask her before I start crying." Marcus walked to the couch where Elena sat oblivious to what was about to happen. She looked up from her book. "What's wrong?" "Nothing." He knelt down in front of her. "Nothing is wrong. For the first time in my life, everything is exactly right." He opened the box. Elena's breath caught. "Marcus, I know I said someday. I know I said we'd wait until Sophie was ready, until we'd built something that could stand on its own. But I've realized something. Someday is now. The life we've built, the program, the foundation, this family, it's already standing. It's been standing for years. The only thing missing is this." He took her hand. "Elena Ashford, will you marry me?" Elena's eyes filled with tears. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, yes, yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger. Sophie cheered from across the room, and Marcus, kneeling on the floor of the apartment he had once thought would always be empty, felt something he had never expected to feel again. Complete. The wedding was held in the chapel 6 months later. Maria played Amazing Grace as Elena walked down the aisle. Sophie stood beside her father as best woman. The veterans from Queens formed an honor guard, and 200 people, students, teachers, donors, friends, witnessed the moment when Marcus Webb and Elena Ashford became a family. At the reception, Marcus took the microphone. "When I was a janitor," he began, "I used to think my story was over. I used to believe that the best parts of my life were behind me, that I had used up all my chances, made all my music, loved all I was going to love." He looked at Elena radiant in white, and at Sophie standing beside her. "I was wrong. The best parts were waiting. They were always waiting. I just had to be brave enough to find them." He raised his glass. "To second chances. To broken people who refused to stay broken. To the music that never stopped playing, even when I stopped listening." The crowd raised their glasses, and to my wife, my daughter, my family, the reasons I finally came home." They drank. And somewhere in the silence between notes, Marcus could have sworn he heard Miriam laughing. The story doesn't end there. It never really ends. Because 3 years after the wedding, Marcus watched his daughter perform her first solo concert. She played Sophie's Lullaby, his gift to her, now her gift to the world, and the audience wept. Because 5 years after the wedding, Elena stepped down as CEO to focus full-time on teaching. She plays every day now, not perfectly but joyfully. The fear is gone. Only the music remains. Because 10 years after the wedding, the listening room became the largest community music education program in American history. And at its heart always is the same simple truth Marcus discovered on a stage in New York City when a critic asked him to play as a joke. Music isn't about perfection. It's about connection. It's about taking the broken pieces of yourself and finding someone who wants to help you put them back together. It's about showing up even when you're scared. It's about saying yes to something you thought was lost forever. Marcus Webb was a janitor. He was a war veteran. He was a widower, a single father, an invisible man in a world that had forgotten him. And then one night, he sat down at a piano and reminded the world what it means to be human. The music never stopped. The silence was never the end. It was always just a rest between movements. And the next movement, the best movement, was just beginning.